Welcome to Nameless Debate Radio, where radioactivity is contagious.
Alright, man. We were gonna do free will versus determinism, right?
Yep.
Yep. So you're taking the side of free will?
Yeah. So I would assert that essentially free will is a lot more. It actually is more. It fits better with how reality is as we perceive it. And I would assert that there's not enough. There's not enough evidence to support that something that we don't know of is actually determining all actions and outcomes.
Okay. So like your first point was about like the fact that like it appears for like to our frame of perception as if we have free will. Is that right?
Well, no, I'm saying reality as we perceive it doesn't seem to fit with the idea that something would be controlling all of it, controlling all of our actions and the outcomes of such.
Okay, I feel like that's not quite what you said before, but I don't really agree with that. Like ultimately, if something was like controlling all the outcomes to events, we wouldn't really know if that was the case. It would be the sort of thing where it could well be happening, and you wouldn't have any particular idea about it. Isn't that correct?
Well, what makes you think that we wouldn't know? Why would something with the power to control all of our actions and outcomes keep itself a secret? It obviously wouldn't fear us.
What do you mean keep itself a secret? It's not like a conscious being. We're talking about the fact that like the universe and the way it works is hard to understand, and your cognition is even harder to understand. It's one of the most complicated things we've ever tried to analyze. And when it comes to like the decision-making process that you execute in order to like decide what to do, ultimately, even if it was a deterministic process, because you can't see into the future, it would nonetheless seem to you to be free will.
Well, just because I don't have any precognition doesn't mean that I wouldn't be able to accurately predict a lot of the results of what I would do. That's the entire basis of science. It's essentially a belief that what has worked and what has happened in the past will repeat itself, and that's why when you're testing things, you'll test it more than one time with the belief that, okay, I understand how the laws of nature work, so the results I got last time will repeat themselves because that's how the universe works. Essentially, that these laws will make it to where these things can repeat themselves. So we can understand that far. What I'm suggesting is that why would we have this sort of deterministic system within our universe? What would be the motive? Why would we not know? Why would there's a few questions.
So like, what would be the motive? I don't really understand what that means. There doesn't have to be a motive for something to be the case, right? That implies creative agency of some variety. And like, when we're talking about like, you asked about like why it wouldn't be obvious to us, but realistically, like physics wasn't obvious to us to begin with. It took us a long time to come up with a model of physics that was properly effective, that worked to the degree where we could send, for instance, spacecraft into space, right? So like when we think about the fact that like the way that we describe the world in like the deterministic sciences that we do have has evolved over time, and our understanding has become more and more sophisticated until we were able to predict with like quite a degree of accuracy what will or will not happen in a physical interaction, right?
Exactly.
That seems to imply a deterministic, no, but that's a deterministic framework. That physics is a deterministic framework.
I would say that physics could be something that's deterministic because physics doesn't have a consciousness, and it doesn't have, as far as we know, mind you, I'm making assertions on essentially us not seeing evidence, but I'm also making the assertion that because we don't have evidence of anything other than free will, or anything essentially being deterministic of our free will and our choices, I'm simply asserting that since there is no evidence, I see no reason to believe that that is the case.
All right, so like I guess I'm a bit confused about why you brought up like this idea of like whether or not the universe has consciousness. What does that have to do with it having a deterministic mechanical structure?
So to determine our conscious decisions, it would need a consciousness by extension to process it.
I'm not so sure that I agree with that. Like realistically, when we're talking about a physical interaction, right, the model that we use to calculate what happened in the past isn't the same as the thing that happened in the past, isn't that so?
Well, yeah, pretty much. That's the whole idea behind science, is that we believe it will repeat
Yes.
itself.
No, but the
Yes.
point is, like, so for instance, right, so like when we like think about the Big Bang, right, we can like create a model of what happened in the Big Bang, and then what we can do is we can say, okay, based on this model, there should be like this distribution of elements throughout like the universe, and then we can use our like measurements to demonstrate that actually that like distribution of elements is in fact the case, which is sort of like a piece of evidence like that pretty strongly indicates that our model like is accurately representing reality, because we're like basing a prediction on like the conditions immediately after the Big Bang and being able to predict something about the universe today, which is like a long time later. So like I guess my
Exactly, but
question.
there's evidence.
No, but
There's
I
evidence
guess
of
yes,
it,
but I
and
guess
that's what
my
we're going
question
off
to
of.
you is that like for such a prediction to be possible, isn't it true that the system that you are predicting has to be deterministic in nature?
No. In fact, I think it is much more likely that it is simply random, and it is simply, you can go back to chemistry and physics for this. You can say that when, when certain elements interact with each other, it can cause an explosion. That's not a deterministic value or a deterministic
Um,
situation. It's simply that they have run into each other through, just
um,
dumb luck, and they've exploded.
like my
What
dude, I know, but determinism, it really feels like you're equivocating between two types of determination here, man. It sounds like you're equivocating between the determination you make about something and the fact that the universe has a deterministic structure, which is the way that things are, which is the thing that we model with science, right? And like when you're talking about like physics and chemistry, right? Like in chemistry, the chemicals interact according to the laws of chemistry. There's no other way for them to interact. And the same is true of every science. The principles which govern the technical field apply to all of the phenomena within, and there is no sense in which they're not consistent with the principles.
No, I understand that. What I'm asserting again is essentially that there could be a deterministic aspect to our universe, and it could in fact be the system that we live in. But what would be determined is not our actions and the course of
How do you,
action we decide to
I
take.
mean,
What I'm saying is that, in my view, the deterministic aspect of our universe would be essentially the laws of physics and the laws of
I mean,
nature and
yeah,
things that you can
okay.
prove. That would be
Look,
it. I'm saying that
dude.
free will is in fact existent. Like
I
humans
mean,
have free
look,
will.
I accept that that's your opinion, and I agreed with everything up until your supposition about free will. Like, ultimately, I don't see where you like pull a justification for halting the reduction to deterministic mechanics just short of free will. Like, for instance, okay, let's have a look at it, right? We go, so physics is deterministically mechanical. It is. There's no
Yes.
doubt about it. Yeah. So then chemistry, deterministically mechanical. Biology, deterministically mechanical. Okay. Neurology, deterministically mechanical. We can test that with an fMRI machine, all right? Neurology,
Exactly.
right, produces psychology. Psychology, even if we do not know the rules, is deterministic and mechanical, and every choice that you make is governed by the decision-making process that you have no choice but to employ because of what you are, a biological subjective framework.
Okay. So the thing there is that, like I said, these are the laws of physics, and just because there are deterministic properties within our universe, and even if you call them that, free will doesn't quite fit into a science model, right? So you could
I know.
have, well, yes, that's what I'm saying, is that we can test these deterministic properties and we'll get the same result over and over because it's
Correct.
predetermined. Yes, perfect. However, you can test somebody's free will and their course of action, how they choose to respond to stimuli over and over and over again, and you could get varying results
Are you, I
every
mean,
single time.
wait, just quickly. Are you aware of the fact that we have used fMRI machines to detect decisions up to 7 seconds before they're made?
Well, yes, of course.
So wait,
There's
just quickly.
neurological
You're like,
activity that you can measure,
no,
of
no,
course,
but
because that's
like
simply
not just neurological activity. There is like neurological activity which directly corresponds to the choice that is made up to 7 seconds before conscious thought happens about the choice.
okay. So
Yeah, that's a
that's not
fact.
always.
That's
I know.
scientific evidence. Like we've
Well,
demonstrated
I'm
that. All
saying that
right. So
that's not
let
always
me just
true.
quickly All right, just let me quickly jump to another example, all right? So if you knew everything about the universe, start to finish, you knew every variable and every rule, and you plugged them into a computer, the computer would come up with one solution, one way things are, one way things occur, and one way things must always have been, because the principles and the variables of physics can only make as their outcome their deterministic conclusion. It's the only thing that they can come up with. They don't have another way to exist.
Okay. So I wanted to address your first one first here. The first example was essentially that you can detect brain activity on a decision-making situation up to 7 seconds beforehand. However, you can detect brain activity on somebody making a decision weeks beforehand, because people will think on decisions,
I don't think
right?
you understand.
You
I'm
can
talking
also,
about like
what I'm
an
saying is that
experiment
you
where they
have to
prompt
get-
you to make a split-second decision, and which decision you make can be predicted accurately by the fMRI scanner because of the subconscious patterns of activity that underlie the choice. And long before you've decided which one you're going to pick, you have already decided. You just do not know it.
Yes,
We've shown
that is subconscious. There are subconscious decisions made and subconscious
Yeah, so where
activities going
exactly?
on to further understand the consequences of these actions. That's what your brain is doing. However,
Yep.
you can also make these decisions long before 7 seconds has passed. People can
No, but
do this much faster than that.
that's
And
not
then
the
also
point.
to address this, I did want to say that free will, like I said, you're using basically the empirical data to essentially establish, okay, these things do repeat themselves, so they must be predetermined. However, again, I'm going to go back to assert that free will is not always predetermined. You can put a person in the same situation 100 times, and you can have varying results potentially on every single test.
I'm sorry, where's your evidence for that?
Free will?
I've never seen. Yeah, no, you just said you can put the same person in the same situation and they will have a differing outcome. How could that be
No,
possible?
I'm saying they could. So
No, they
essentially,
couldn't.
you
Explain
can have
that
these
to me.
outcomes. Okay, so I'll give you an example. So you know that there's two parts of the brain. There's the logical sort of rational side, and then there's the more creative and emotional side, of course. So whichever part of your brain happens to be more active, more awake, like when you're asleep, part of your brain is actually asleep and the other part's awake. So you could, depending on where you are, like if you were sleep deprecated or things like that, certain parts of your brain can. I'm sorry. Yes.
You mean deprivated?
Yes. Yeah, mix those two up. So what I'm saying is essentially, in that case, you could have either side of that brain make a completely different choice based on if they're making a rational decision or an emotional decision. However, you can get varied responses because there's different ways to respond to things. However, you would then have to say that essentially, if everything's predetermined, you would have to illustrate what is the end result of that, what is the goal of it, and then where's the repeatability. You would need the evidence of it.
So just quickly, like you brought up like the two hemispheres of the brain, but I regret to inform you that like the pop psychology view on the two hemispheres of the brain is pretty shallow, and that the actual research is a lot more complicated than that. It is nowhere near as simple as saying one side of your brain is creative and the other side is analytical. That is not accurate. It's way too simplified. I
simplified it to kind of keep this debate shorter, because I think you said we have to keep it at 30 minutes.
But look, it's neuroscience. It can't really be simplified to the degree that you did, right? And so like ultimately we're talking about is like whether or not the things in the world can be like observed to have deterministic processes. And I would say like apart from the things that we admit to not understanding, pretty much every model we've ever created that has worked has been deterministic. And the reason that we can say that it works is that we use the model to use the subjective form of determination and like predict what will happen, right? But whether or not the universe is deterministic has nothing to do with the subjective determination about it. It has to do with whether or not the state is predicted by the previous state. And it is, like functionally speaking.
Yes. Now, what I'm saying to that, and we went over this, is I was saying that science in and of itself and the scientific method that you're talking about is essentially the belief that these things will repeat themselves if you put them in the same environment. What I'm arguing is that free will acts very differently and you can get varying results. Now, the reason for that, and I will say this again, essentially our system, our way to get to what we call and perceive as objective truths, could very well just be us kind of keying into certain deterministic aspects of our universe. If we have a system that tests to see if something adheres to this deterministic, essentially, system in our universe, that's great. We have this falsifiability that proves if something exists within a deterministic framework. That's great. So we know now what adheres to it, but to say that because we found things that adhere to it, that everything does would simply be a fallacy. That's all I'm saying.
I don't really think that that's what I said, though. What I said is that all of the evidence adheres to it, and none of the evidence contradicts it. And any evidence that you might bring up, no, but listen. Any evidence that you might bring up, and you could say contradicts it, I can always say to you, isn't it just as possible that it's deterministic in a way that you do not yet understand? And your answer has to be yes, because obviously you wouldn't know if that were true, and it's possible, right? So, like, realistically,
no, yes, you're very right there, but then there's no evidence to support.
I don't agree. That's what I just
determinism there.
No, but I just said that. I said there was.
Wait, okay, so what would the evidence
let me put it to you. Yep. So the fact that physics is deterministic is one factor. Then we say, okay, so another branch of science, chemistry, that's deterministic. It's another factor. Okay. Then if biology is deterministic as well, listen. Biology is deterministic as well, right? And then neurology, and then psychology, and then sociology, right? What we're talking about here is that every frame of reference that we've ever thought of applying turned out to be deterministic when we figured out what the like formula for the mechanism was. And realistically, what I'm saying is that I'm saying that all of the fields of science which appear to function with deterministic models are all pieces of evidence that all point at the same conclusion. The conclusion is the universe has a deterministic structure, because if it did not have a deterministic structure, then those models with a deterministic functional correspondence to reality would not have predictive accuracy, and we can observe that they do.
Okay, so what I would then argue to you is kind of two-pronged, and I'm going to try to keep this very concise. So one is that I'm going to reassert that essentially we as humans have decided that rationality is finding the things that are predetermined and fit into this deterministic system. Two, essentially you would have to. Okay, so number two is that essentially you then have to say that free will also adheres to this. However, to do so, you would then need some sort of falsifiability. You need something that you can bring to people and say, look, I've tested this 100 times. I've gotten the same result. And what I'm seeing is that they're adhering to this deterministic system in this way, that free will, if applied to, this situation over and over and over, I got the same outcome. However, there's almost no examples of that.
Of free will being applied to get. I mean, of course, you can't do the same situation over again. Like, the fact that there's no examples of that is a complete non sequitur, because I can't put the same person in the same situation and watch what they do. That's impossible. All right. So,
well, you absolutely can.
Just quickly. I'm just going
to
do
it under sterile test conditions as well.
No, dude. You couldn't. You couldn't put them in the exact same position where they had the exact same information. Not after, not before. You can't put someone in the same moment twice. It doesn't work like that. And if you could, as far as I can tell, they would evaluate the situation the same way, because they're evaluating it based on how they know to evaluate things, the information that they can perceive, and their value structure, essentially, right? So I'm going to take a cue from.
Wait, but the value structure is not deterministic.
I'm not quite done.
Factor you just I don't accept that.
I don't accept that, but that's not the point, all right? So, like, I'm going to take a cue from Will Taft and Abath. I'm going to say, like, what property of decision making is not bound by a deterministic structure?
Oh, you're actually asking.
Yeah, I'm asking you that question.
Okay, so I do want to reassert, essentially, that a value system has nothing to do with determinism and could not be determined.
That's not related to this
well, I'm just saying that in your description, you said that that's a factor in decision making.
Look, but I disagreed with you. The point is,
be affected by determinism.
Look, man, I disagreed with you about that, but the point is, we're not arguing about that right now.
I'm curious as to why. That's why I asked you.
But I asked you a specific question, and I'd really appreciate it if you answered it. So, like, what property of decision making is not bound by a deterministic structure?
What property of decision making? The value system. I just laid it out.
Value system. How do you suppose that? Like, do you have evidence of that?
My morality is not based on most deterministic systems.
How do you
For
know?
example.
Okay, wait. How do you evaluate?
Okay, I'll tell you. So let's say I was taking a deontological stance, and I say that.
No, I'm asking you how you do, not how you might.
I know. I'm just giving you an example. So if I were
but don't
to,
give me a hypothetical though. I'm asking how you do justify your moral decisions and how you don't, not how you might and might not.
how I feel about it.
Okay, so you're saying like you basically decide to do the thing that you feel will be best for you. Is that accurate?
I guess so.
Yeah, okay, so if you're deciding to do the thing that you think will be best for you, is any decision you ever make different to that?
Yes.
How?
I could simply decide different things are better for me if I were to be put in the same situation
look,
over and over.
but that's not the question I'm asking. I'm asking, is it ever the case that when you decide to do something, you decide to do the thing that doesn't benefit you the most?
Yes, I've done it all. I've done it many times throughout my life.
When?
Okay, so to give you an example, when I was younger, I thought it would be in my best interest to eat as much candy as humanly possible.
Mm-hmm.
So there is, in fact, not a lot of nutritional benefit to eating a lot of candy. And in fact, it's bad for your teeth. It gives you cavities. These are detriments. So there's an example of what you asked me to present.
Wait, no, I don't think that was an example though.
Well, I did something with my own free will and my own value system at that age that I thought would be best for me. And
yeah, but you were wrong. That's not
that
so
doesn't
like
matter.
I'm asking. No, it does matter. I'm
that
asking.
would then mean
Listen, I'm
that would
asking about an intentional difference, right?
I
Is it
know,
ever the case? Listen, is it ever the case that you do something that you did not at that time think was the best choice for you?
Yes.
When?
Okay, so about a year ago, I was at a party. I committed to myself that I would not drink, but then everyone was drinking. I was offered a drink, and on impulse, I just decided, okay, I'll take a drink or two. Then I got smashed and I passed out at the house.
So you're saying
I thought
again,
it was a terrible idea to drink. I thought it was an awful idea. However, I still did it knowing that it probably wasn't in my best interest.
Like, let's just analyze that for a second, though. Some part of you didn't think it was a terrible idea, right? Because you had an impulse to do it. The part of you that was the impulse definitely thought that it would be a good idea to get a little bit drunk. You thought it would be fine. You know, you rationalized it to yourself. Some part of you did.
But I didn't rationalize it.
Listen, I guarantee you, even if you weren't conscious of it, you did. Because I've observed people making decisions all the time. They always choose to do the thing that they think is going to be best for them. And whenever they make mistakes, they make those mistakes because they're confused. And it doesn't mean that they weren't trying to do the thing that they thought was best for them. It just means that we're very confused creatures, and that often when we think we're doing something that is the best for us, we're wrong.
So that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
What I'm saying is, every single time you act, even if you get it wrong, you are attempting to do what you think is best for you.
Absolutely not. What I'm saying, and the reason I disagree.
How you can reject that.
Now, I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why I think that's why I don't agree with that right now. What I'm saying is that I can make decisions that I know are wrong. I can make decisions that I know are right. However, your statement that people
are you sure that
you
know that they're wrong or right? That's
I know.
Question.
Hold on. I just want to get this out. When you say that people are confused and can be confused and make other decisions, that would again be more evidence to support my side that there is no deterministic system that we're adhering to because we can simply get the wrong answer. Within physics, you can't really get the wrong answer if you were to look at the correct variables and test it.
Oh, wait, that's ridiculous. We've got the wrong answer in physics repeatedly throughout history. And first of all, like,
it's not that we're getting... Here, I'll rephrase. It's not us getting the wrong answer. It's that
how does that demonstrate free will?
Hold on. I'm just saying, it's that the wrong thing will not happen, right? It's sort of like if we were to test and see if you can light water on fire. Obviously, it doesn't have the chemical structure, the chemical makeup to be set on fire. However,
you can light it on fire if there's oil in it.
Hold on. I'm just saying that at no point in history has there ever been a time, nor will there ever be a time, when that changes.
I just told you.
Human free will. Hold on.
Like, dude, I just gave you a way that we can light water on fire.
No, if you add that new element into it. I'm talking about H2O only. No oil.
Okay.
What I'm saying
are
is
you aware that there are? Are you aware? Wait. Are you aware that there are some fires? One sec. Are you aware that there are some fires for which adding water is like a fuel, not not something
kitchen fires to start.
Okay, so like you're accepting then. Yeah, you're accepting then that it is possible to burn water.
No, what I'm saying is that essentially you won't be able to take a match and put it on water and have it light on fire.
Are you
sure? And that will never change.
If you tip water into a very hot fire, the water vaporizes and the hydrogen burns.
That's great. It's not set on fire. It's simply changed from a liquid to a
Pretty
gas.
sure that's exactly
All
what
you've
setting
done
on
is
fire
vaporize
is.
the water.
Dude,
That's all you've
what am
done.
I doing? What am I doing when I set a log on fire? I'm turning the material into gas, aren't I?
No, so what you're doing there is essentially you're accelerating the molecules to where they are so fast that they break apart and they're loose enough to where they're not containing. To where they're not staying within a liquid, more solid form. They're moving so fast that they can turn into a lighter, more gas-like form. That's all you're doing. You're not changing it very much.
Like realistically, a fire when you light something wooden on fire, and a fire where you light water on fire, or a fire where you light gas on fire. All of those are burning gas.
I was using your example
all
when
of
you
the fire
vaporize
burns
the water.
gas. No, but like what I'm saying is that the process of fire is the same.
Okay, not all fires are the same to start with, but
obviously, but like the fire is like what's the word? An endothermic reaction, which is like very violent, right? And what's happening is often, most of the time, what's happening is that whatever the material is that's burning, it's being converted to a gas to burn most of the time.
Yes.
Yes, so when you say that water cannot burn, bullshit.
No, I'm saying water can't be set on fire without any other elements.
I don't really accept that because first of all, like you didn't put that qualification in to begin with. I said like you can put oil in the water and that was a valid contention. But realistically, if you can use water to fuel a fire, I'm not sure really where the distinction is between that and setting it on fire, right? But this seems like a little bit off topic.
You're adding an extra element. You're adding a factor. You're adding a variable.
This is a bit off topic, right? So like when it comes to like your decision making process, right? You are trying to do what's best for you. You agreed to that. And I'm not too sure how. No, but you're trying.
I've given you an example. I can give you another example.
No, but you didn't give me an example. You gave me an example where you were conflicted, right? Like you said, like I did something that I knew was the wrong decision, but clearly, if you had known for sure that it was the wrong decision, you wouldn't have done it.
I did.
No, but you did do it. That demonstrates clearly.
Well,
no, but look, I don't accept that.
It's okay. I'll just re-explain. What I'm saying is that even though I knew it was the wrong decision, in my mind I was like, oh, well, that looks fun. Let's just do that.
Yes, so you rationalized it.
No, I didn't. I said, this looks fun. I know it's wrong.
That is a rationalization.
That's not a rationalization. That's me simply saying. Okay, hold on. I'll explain. I'm simply valuing that pleasure over my own well-being in that case.
No, but the thing is that there's nothing that is inherently wrong with that sacrifice. People do that kind of sacrifice all the time. The fact that you said to begin with...
that demonstrates that it is not deterministic.
No, it doesn't. The fact that you said to begin... It doesn't. The fact that you said to begin with...
because it is not adhering to one determinism.
Okay, let me put it to you
what you're arguing is that we're always... Well, what you're arguing is that we're using our free will to advance our well-being. However, we both just agreed that people don't always do that. So what deterministic system would free will adhere to if it's not to advance our own well-being?
Free will doesn't adhere to any deterministic system because freedom from deterministic mechanics is a contradiction in terms, right? Because the fact of the matter is that we can observe that our environment is governed by deterministic mechanics and we are made up of our environment. The conclusion that we somehow are not deterministic in nature and that we have free will is just a fanciful illusion. It satisfies you emotionally.
You just said that we have free will. You just said that.
No, I didn't.
Well, okay. Maybe I misheard you, and I'll point out what I thought I heard, and tell me if I'm wrong.
Yep. Okay.
I thought I heard you say that free will does not adhere to any deterministic value or system.
Yes, but I didn't. That doesn't mean that we don't have free will. Sorry, that doesn't mean that we have free will. It means we don't have free will. I'm saying that the evidence suggests, scientific evidence suggests, all the scientific models suggest that the environment is actually deterministic. And so, like when you say, when you say free will isn't commensurate with any deterministic system, I say no fucking shit. That's because it is an illusion. You have an illusion of free choice because you can't predict the decision that you're going to make. But in any situation with the same variables and the same
I would argue
information,
that I could.
Stop. In any situation where you have access to exactly the same information, you are the same person, you have the same disposition, nothing is different, right? You calculate what you think is best for you, right? And let's say, like,
I
maybe
just demonstrated that I don't have to.
Maybe you have impulsive desires that you're not moderating properly, right? And so those impulsive desires make you do things that are good for you in the short term but bad for you in the long term, and that's how you justify them. But realistically, what's happening
Well, that
is
wasn't
that
good for me in the short term either.
but it's not, the point is that just because you can do something apart from what you predicted doesn't show that you have free will. It shows that you're confused about the way that you will act. No, it doesn't.
Okay, so I can re-demonstrate this. So what I'm saying is that, again, this free will would be more unpredictable by our agreements here and the examples we've laid out, in that it's not always going to be that we make free will decisions to advance our well-being, nor will we always make a free will decision to create detriment, to essentially to harm ourselves.
What's the mechanism for having a free will decision then?
So that mechanism is simply your train of thought and the action you decide, the course of action.
How do you evaluate your train of thought and decide which ones to act on and which ones not to act on?
It depends on your state of mind, how impulsive you are, what sort of personality you have.
That's not really what I asked. I asked
whether
the criteria
you think things through.
What criteria do you use?
People use different criteria, is what I'm saying.
You specifically. What criteria do you use? Yes.
Mostly a consequentialist look. Simply because
so
I like to.
So mostly, what apart from that do you use?
I guess it's mostly consequentialism.
So it's just consequentialism, is that correct?
For the most part, I would say, just dependent on the consequences. For the consequences for myself.
So it's consequentialism? Yep, so it's consequentialism, just straight up. No, mostly, like it is consequentialism.
It's mostly. It's definitely a mostly.
Where's the last?
Well, I have certain deontological principles as well.
Yeah, but that's, I mean, you're evaluating your deontological principles with the idea in mind that evaluating those principles will give you the best outcome.
Well, not really. There are just certain things that I feel should not be done and should not exist regardless.
So you're saying you have intuition? Intuition. Are you saying you have intuition?
It's not so much intuition. It's something that there's certain things I can't stomach. So let's say like rape, for example, I don't think should exist for any reason at all, because I personally can't stomach it. It makes me want to throw up. So I'm just like, okay, well, that shouldn't exist.
Yes,
deontologically, I condemn it.
Wait a minute, I'm confused.
In all circumstances.
You just said like it sickens you, it makes you want to throw up, right? That sounds like a negative well-being state of affairs, right? Like when you know that a rape has occurred, it bothers you, and getting rid of rape would be a better consequence in your opinion. Is that correct?
Well, what I'm saying is it should have never existed in the first place. It shouldn't have been anything.
No, but that's
people
not what
I'm
asking. I'm asking, like, would getting rid of rape be a better consequence in your opinion?
Getting rid of it and a better consequence. So you're asking me if the consequences of rape existing as opposed to rape not existing.
No, look, like you referred to your like deontological principle, and I'm saying when I evaluate that deontological principle, what I can see is that it is a subjective preference of yours that you don't like a specific consequence, and then you're saying I categorize this consequence as negative and the absence of it as positive. Therefore, I think that rape should not occur, right? But what you're doing when you say you think rape should not occur, which appears
actually.
No, but look, you're taking a deontological stance about like the principal nature of whether or not the act is right or wrong, right? But what you're saying is that ultimately, like the reason that you would pose the action is because you feel like the absence of the action would be a better outcome.
I feel that it would be a neutral outcome, but
I don't agree. No, so you're saying rape existing is neutral?
No, I'm saying rape not existing would be neutral.
No, but is rape existing?
It would be. Well, I didn't claim that. What I claimed is that rape
I'm
not
asking you
existing
yes or no.
is
So it's no.
That's all I'm saying.
So is rape existing negative then?
Rape existing negative? Yes.
Yeah. So the opposite of a negative is a positive. Did you know that?
Okay. It's not a black and white. There are neutrals.
It is.
There are neutrals. Hold on. There are neutrals.
The absence of a bad thing is a good thing.
No, it is not.
Yes, it is.
Okay. So maybe in an idealistic stance or an
No,
I'm
like
gonna mix these up.
logically, the absence of a bad thing counts as a good thing.
Okay. So what happens if you take away all good and all bad?
Well, I don't understand what that has to do with this discussion, because you took a
Well, I'm
stance
just
on what was
saying,
good and
I'm
bad.
trying to illustrate to you essentially that there are times when things are neutral.
No, I don't agree with that. Like, well, obviously, sometimes things are
Okay.
neutral, but not in this situation. In this situation, you took a specific stance on a moral action. You said that rape existing is negative, and I'm telling you that the
Yes. In the
negation of
absence of
both.
that.
Listen. The negation of both parts of that statement go like this: rape not existing is positive. That's the opposite. I'm telling you.
Okay. To exist and not to exist. Is existence positive or negative to you?
Existence is a positive.
Why?
Because like exist is true. Like that's the only positive
No, no,
we
no, no,
have.
no. That's so truth is what's positive to you, right? Because
Yes,
that's
of
what it sounds
course.
like. Why is truth positive?
Because truth is the like most useful thing. It is the most transcendent thing. It is the most consistent thing. It's well beyond me. I'm a flawed subjective being, and truth is something to aspire to. Because if I knew what was true, maybe I wouldn't make so many fucking mistakes.
Okay. So in and of your own statement, you existing and you saying that, is it not true that you exist? Are you not technically a truth?
I don't understand how this is related to the topic of the discussion.
Well, I'm just saying, are you existing? Is that true? Do you exist?
In my opinion, yeah.
Okay. So you are a truth. Why is you existing and that being true? Why is that positive?
Well, because existence is a positive claim by definition. Like
It is not.
it is an existential predicate is positive.
Okay, but that's a word game. A positive claim
It's
does
not.
not
No, that's not a
equal.
word game,
It does
dude.
not
That's not a
equal.
word game. That is not a
Okay,
word
well,
game. That's
I'll explain
philosophy.
why I think that. If I'm wrong, feel free to correct it. What I'm saying is that you're essentially equating a positive claim to a net moral positive.
Dude, I'm
Am
telling
I
you,
wrong there?
in terms of propositions, okay, an existential predicate is considered a positive proposition. I'm telling you.
Okay, so to simply exist is a positive to you.
Yes, it's a positive in existence.
Okay, why is existence positive?
No, not positive as in good for me. Positive as in true.
Okay, so it can be true. So is it positive to exist?
What? I don't think you understand. There is no
Well, no,
good
I'm just trying
distinction
to get
between
out
true
of
and
you.
positive. Are you
Well, now
asking
you're
like?
saying that
Wait a minute.
are
It
true.
sounds. Look, dude. It sounds like you're equivocating. Are you asking like you just used the same word twice in two different senses, right? You said like, is it positive to say that is it a positive claim if you say you exist? And the answer
No,
to
I'm
that is
asking
yes.
if
And then
these are net positives, like
no, but like
positives and
that's not what
negatives.
positive in the existential sense means, right? You're asking if
I know you're using it
truth.
as affirmative. I'm using it as an
That
actual
is what
moral or
positive
positive.
means. No,
Okay.
so you're saying
No.
good for you.
Yes.
That's
There
not
you
what
go.
positive means.
Then wait. So why
Okay,
is it
so let me
used
give you an
within?
example.
Why
Let
is
me
it
give you an
used
example.
within
If I
philosophy?
have a positive number, is the positive number good for me?
No. Again, so these are.
No,
This
just
is kind of
quickly.
what I was talking
What is
about. This
when
is
we
kind of
have
what I was talking
positive.
about.
Dude,
In
when we
that
have
we're using a word game at this point. We don't
we're
need to
not
use a
using
word
a
game.
word game. Listen to me. When we have positivity in electrical circuits, is the positive a good thing?
So that's yet another way to use a positive. The word positive.
No, but
The way I'm
positive
using it.
always means
I know.
affirmative.
No, it doesn't, and
It
I'll give you an
does.
example. Okay. I'll tell you why I don't think that's true. The reason I
Okay,
don't think
so
that's true is essentially people can use the word positive when they're talking about good well-being,
yeah, of
happy,
course.
healthy,
Yeah,
comfortable, and then
yes.
they can use the
Affirmative.
hold on. I just have one other part to contrast that. They will then use negative to imply negative well-being when you are unhappy, unhealthy, and not
My dude,
comfortable.
that's affirmative well-being.
Okay. You can
Yeah, like
interchange
it's like
affirmative,
it's like
positive,
well-being.
valid. You can
Well-being is
interchange these
positive.
words. That's great.
Well-being is
But that's
good.
what I'm using them as.
No, but I don't think you understand. Like when you said that there's a different kind of like positive, you gave me an example where it is a metaphorical instantiation of the kind of positive I described. You're saying positive can mean good for you, but actually positive means affirmative. And in the context of well-being,
Okay, so positive. What does positive mean? Philosophy.
I'm not quite done. Okay. In the context of well-being, positive means positive for your well-being, as in like it is affirmative in the stance of your well-being. It helps you be well.
Okay, so we can use it for that. That's what I'm using. If you remember, we were essentially talking about, is rape positive or is rape negative? That was the question you asked me. And when you were using it in the philosophical sense, as in, is it better, is it good or positive, or is it bad or negative? That's what you were saying, and that's how I was using positive and negative. So I was asking, why is you existing a good thing? Why is truth a good thing? That is the terminology I will switch to instead of saying positive and negative. So that way we're both on the same page.
Why is me existing a good thing?
Why is existence a good thing for anyone or anything?
It isn't inherently a good thing. What I meant when I said that
Then we're in
existence is
agreement.
positive, I meant that existence, as in an existential predicate, is a positive proposition, right? Vivi, did you have something to say? Yeah, but for sure. But I think like what was happening was that there was an equivocation going on in terms of the word positive.
Okay, that's what I'm doing. I'm equating positive to good, negative to bad.
Yeah, but you understand that that's a specific instantiated definition, and it's not the general definition.
Okay, you can use different definitions for the same words. It's like,
can't you just say good for you, or like positive well-being wise, or something like that? Like qualify your statement so that we know what you're talking about.
I can. This is just how I normally talk. I usually don't change any of my vernacular for any of my debates.
Okay, well, I think maybe you should, because sometimes the mistake comes from the vernacular.
I agreed. No, I agreed to change the terminology I'll use for the sake of this debate this one time, because I want us to both be on the same page. I've agreed that I will say good and bad for you instead of positive and negative. So we're on the same page there. We're good. So again,
and we didn't. You asked me like, what's positive about existence, as in like good for me, right? And like my answer obviously was like no, nothing. Like it's not inherently good for me.
Okay, we agree.
That's not the point. That's not the point. The point is that what I do think is good for me is governed by things that I do not choose.
Okay, so what governs what's good for you?
All the factors that I consider in my analysis and my subjective value structure, which comes from
perfect.
a mixture.
That contradicts what you just said then.
No, it doesn't. Explain.
Okay, so what you just said was what's good and bad for you is determined by things that are not within my control. It's in a deterministic sense. And then when I asked you what determines it, you then went on to factors that you control, what you consider to be positive, to be good or bad for you.
I don't think you understand. I don't think that you do control them, man. Just because you feel like you do doesn't mean that you do. When you say, for instance, that subjective values are something you get to choose, I feel like laughing at you. You don't get to choose that you subjectively value survival. That is biological imperative. You have a survival instinct, and all of your other tastes are instantiated very similarly.
Okay, so there's not always just survival mechanisms going on, especially with humans. I'm sure you understand that, though, right?
I said that, like, the things that you value are things that you have evolved to value.
But that would be your instinct. The reason that animals
it's not
want
just
to chase. Hold on, I'm just saying. Animals, like let's say lions, they value survival. So therefore, they will take steps to preserve their survival, to preserve their safety, their life. So that's great. However, with humans, we have what's called free will, where we can make subjective decisions that can potentially. Hold on, this is the last sentence, I promise. We have subjective free will that allows us to make subjective, potentially wrong decisions. So to say that is a deterministic factor within the universe, you would then have to say that within nature, it's allowing us to make wrong decisions. And then that leaves you with a kind of an issue when I come back and ask you, okay, what is the evidence of the universe giving only us this trait to where we can make potentially wrong decisions as opposed to just the survival trait?
I'm confused. What do you mean only us? Animals make mistakes all the fucking time.
It's not about mistakes. It's about subjective, irrational decision making.
So wait a minute. So like when an animal detects danger, but they decide on an impulse to go in for food and they die because of that impulsive decision, is that distinct in some way from the impulsive decision you described where you had a bunch of drinks?
Yes, and I'll illustrate the difference to you since you asked.
Listen, it sounds exactly the same.
Hold on, you've asked me something. I do want to respond here. So the difference is, in my case, I wasn't taking that drink to advance my survival. However, the animal that you've described has then gone into this den, defying its own danger senses to get food to advance its survival.
That's an assumption.
Does not advance my survival.
That's an assumption you're making. I didn't say
that. That's what you laid out to me in your example.
Stop. I didn't say that it was to advance his survival. Let's say he's fat. He doesn't need the extra food. He's putting himself in danger for his taste.
Okay, then you have to put that qualifier on beforehand.
Okay,
you can't then come back. Hold on, I'm just saying one thing. You can't put a qualifier on it after I've given you the answer to your question, if that makes sense.
Oh, well, actually I can, because I realized that I didn't quite qualify myself properly. I apologize for that, but realistically I can put that qualifier on. And the fact that you assumed...
Then with that data, I would give you a different answer.
Quickly though, the fact that you assumed things about my argument which were not explicitly stated, and you made up your own conjecture to support your point, isn't a very good strategy in argument.
Hold on, I can answer your question with the available data and the available qualifiers you just gave me. Would you like that answer now?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. In this case, I would then say that there are almost no examples of that happening.
What? That's a load of bullshit.
Well, then show me one.
What, show you an example of an animal dying because it was like being greedy when it shouldn't have been?
Because it was essentially, yes. Show me essentially a gluttonous animal risking its own survival over its gluttony.
Okay. I will send you a couple of links later. There's definitely video footage of that, man.
And can I interject?
You can definitely show me.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure. Oh, wait. We should get those links.
Let's use your example of you drinking at this party when you knew better, okay?
Wait, hold on. This is kind of like a one-on-one with like me and Matt, though.
No. I think like Eddie's probably got something interesting to say, and like I have to get time to get these links anyway, right?
I think this might illustrate a little bit of a bridge here that might at least try and help us all understand what it is that you're trying to say. I can see personally, even if I were to put myself in your hypothetical, that taking a drink based on like peer pressure, let's say, is an advancement of survival in terms of social survivability. Like the way that we can interact more loosely with friends, the way that we can what I'm trying to say is that what we end up doing is networking because of booze in real simple terms. And
so
it wouldn't be
in my
apparent.
example though, I didn't lay out anything to advance my social standing or to gain any social equity. What I did was I was like, drinking and being inebriated sounds fun.
Exactly.
There was no social connotation behind that.
That is the social
simply
connotation.
Me thinking that might be fun.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that is the social connotation. That even the unconscious, I guess, presence of having fun, that actually causes...
So having fun is a social construct.
Well, just quickly, like to address the thing that you said about like evidence about animals being gluttonous in a way that compromises their survivals. Have you ever heard of an experiment called Rat Park?
I have, but I just want to answer him first because he had a very interesting point actually. So I did want to say that fun, essentially desiring your brain to release that dopamine to experience pleasure. The want to experience pleasure is not a social construct, is what I'm saying.
I probably misspoke.
And I'll link a few things on that.
Yeah, I don't know if I really was trying to assert that either. I think what I'm just trying to grasp at is the idea that even whether we're aware or not of the effects of our actions, our choices, and all of the things that spill out from something as simple as what we invariably come down to is there's an effect with others that it's kind of like theory of mind in a way, where they're building a model of you based on your participation, let's say. And it gives that kind of social dynamic where it's like in group or out group. You get to be a part of the group just even for that moment, which is an intrinsic primate like imperative essentially. And if we didn't have that, I don't think we could have evolved in the ways that we have as, species that collaborate on the scale that we do.
No, you're very correct on that. Humans are pack animals, and they originally were as well. Humans are pretty much undeniably made to cooperate with each other to progress their own species. And there's 2 books I read on that pretty recently. I'll send those to you too.
Okay.
But essentially, what I was illustrating in that was that I was simply seeking the short-term pleasure that, I would be inebriated. It's not so much that I wanted to hang out with friends, because to be honest, at this party, I fucking hated almost everyone. The only guy that I liked was the one whose house it was. So that's why I was.
That's probably the reason for drinking anyway.
Exactly. So the reason I felt that you were essentially saying I was drinking for a social construct was that you were saying something similar, like networking by drinking, and essentially getting that sort of that societal incel. I don't know if it's incel. No, I'm using the wrong word, but essentially you were illustrating the networking thing. And
networking kind of being
that's why
like
I thought what I did.
Yeah, it's a bit of like a offhanded way of saying like other people are looking favorably or disfavorably upon you, and it'll all be based on their values that they have on the act of drinking in and of itself. You've probably noticed that there are no fun times that can be had at a dance club unless you're somewhat inebriated. It's just that's not the place for sobriety.
It's not. There's lots of drugs. There's lots of Xannies and Mollies and
precisely.
All sorts of shit.
Exactly, man. And so I don't know that like my point is, I would say it's a necessity if you want to have fun.
Yeah.
I liked moral imperative a bit better.
It is better. It's more compelling that way, I think.
Do you have empirical evidence
to support that position? So what I'm trying to see though is that if that helps illustrate any of the points that we're all trying to make here, which essentially that seems as though you're saying that subjectively we have the perception of free will, and objectively we don't really have any such thing. Or I might be misreading the entire situation.
Well, free will, we've kind of derailed a lot by getting into this animal thing. Most of my argument really just boils down to the fact that there's a lack of evidence that what we do is predetermined, but there's quite a bit of evidence that suggests that every human on Earth has some degree of free will.
I don't really accept that. There is like subjective anecdotal evidence that people experience something that we might ascribe the term free will to. But realistically, like I said, if we observe like all of the different domains of science, what we see is that every single domain of science that has a like functionally effective model has that model, because the model is like deterministic mechanically, and it corresponds to the deterministic mechanics of reality. So I don't understand where you're coming from when you say, for instance, that we have some free will, specifically us, that is coming from some unknown place, because like as far as I can tell, even if we did have free will, it would be either a variable or a rule. And if it is a variable or a rule that determines our decision-making process, then it's not in any sense free.
And that's what I'm arguing, is that there's variables and not
free.
Very rigid determinism. So what I'm saying is that there are variables. So that would go back to a point I was actually just about to make. I'm not sure
you really heard me properly. I said that, like, in that situation, the will is not free.
No, I'm saying it is, and I'm explaining essentially what your criticism was.
How is it, though?
So what I'm saying is that there are variables that affect your free will. However, it is not 100% adhered to determinism. And the reason I say is that So what I'm saying is that people can experience things differently. In fact, it's proven that perception varies from person to person. And to give you an example, a person who has depression feels much lower lows than a person who doesn't have depression. Like, let's say that they just got dumped by their girlfriend. This depression would make this person have a much lower low than a normal person. That's simply a difference in in how they feel. So they could very well make different free will decisions based on that feeling of a much lower low. So that would be a variable within it, simply because what's going on in your brain, there's certain, it's like bipolar, right? So bipolar will cause you to make extreme decisions and switch and all sorts of things. That's a variable, again, that affects your free will and your decision making.
Okay, but
however, that's simply a variable. It's not full determinism saying that we. Well, what you're essentially arguing is that there's an absence of free will entirely, and that it's
exactly what I'm arguing. But what I said was,
what I'm saying is that there's not enough evidence to support that.
I don't accept that. The thing that you described is mental illness, right? That doesn't have any real effect on whether or not people are deterministic in their cognitive processing.
It does, in fact.
It doesn't though. How?
It does. Okay, so what I'm saying is that these are variables within the decision-making process. Somebody's free will, like a normal person's free will, is going to dictate that they take different actions than somebody who has this mental illness. That's a variable.
I'm confused, right? So, just because the variables are changing does not mean that the system isn't deterministic. When we have physics and when we have differently calibrated systems of physics that we conjecture, right? The fact that we can conjecture them doesn't mean that they're true.
Okay. So if we're going back to physics and we're using, sciences that rely almost exclusively on empirical evidence and empirical theory, we would then have to be able to say that we can predict free will and the choices that people will make 100% of the time, which we cannot do.
Look, what I was trying to say is that, even if the variables are different, right, the variables and the principles together completely account for any variance in decision-making, always, in every situation. There's no way around that equation. The variables and the rules necessarily dictate the conclusion, always.
Okay, so it's not... What you're saying is that essentially what situation they're in and what variables they're experiencing will affect their decision making.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
No, I'm saying I'm saying the rules they use to decide and the information they have available to them are the only factors in their decision making process.
Okay. So those are the only factors. So
Correct.
Why is it then that we can make choices that are detrimental for us?
Because we can be mistaken about what's good for us.
No, I'm talking about intentionally. Why can we do that?
I'm saying when you think you're doing something when you think you're doing something that's intentionally bad for you, what's actually happening is that your understanding of what's good for you is warped.
No. Okay.
Yes.
So
yes, I guarantee it. For instance, if you haven't learned yet to control your impulsivity, right, what that demonstrates is you haven't recognized how important that is in terms of don't consequential good outcome, right? And so
what if I don't care? Wait. What if I don't care?
But that's the thing is, if you're a consequentialist, which you claimed to be, then you necessarily care.
Well, no, I could actually not care about certain consequences. Being a consequentialist doesn't mean that I care. Hold on. Being a consequentialist doesn't mean that I care about every single consequence. It says that when I am making a moral identification of, is this right or is it wrong, I will weigh the consequences, basically weighing the ends to the means, if you will.
No, but
so in that sense, I don't have to apply that to everything. I could very well just not care. And most people are very capable of that.
Anytime you decide...
That then falls out of your determinism.
It doesn't, though. Anytime you decide not to care... Anytime you decide not to care, you're deciding not to care because you think that's the best option given the situation you're presented with.
Well, no. I've illustrated that I don't have to go with the best option, and people a lot of times won't go with the best option. So let me give you another example.
I'm telling you that when you're saying people don't go with the best option, their priorities are screwed up. They're not evaluating the situation correctly. The thing they decide on is what they think is best for them with the frame of analysis they're applying, even if it's not what's best for them overall. They are confused about what's best for them overall, and they do something that seems like the best choice in the moment, given the situation, your impulses, your variables, and all the rules you use to decide. And given all of those factors, there is no part of the process of decision making which is not bound by the criteria I just described. There's nothing in it that isn't deterministic.
Okay, so what would be the criteria that every person's decision-making adheres to?
I told you already, they decide based on what they think is going to be best for them in the frame of analysis that they have chosen to apply.
Okay, so let's say hypothetically let's say you have the grades to get into college, yet you decide, I don't want to go to college after high school, I want to take a break, and I just want to hang out for a while. I don't go to college, even though I know that statistically, provably, going to college will increase my quality of life in the long term and allow me more opportunities in the future. So I've then decided against the best possible course of action simply because I don't want to.
Look, I think
How would that fit within your criteria that we only make decisions based on what's good for us?
I told you, I pretty clearly evaluated that already. Their priorities are out of whack, okay? People happen to be quite lazy. It is. They're lazy. Okay. We don't want to do work. So when it comes to having a chance, listen,
priorities
I'm not done.
Is all that laziness is. That's all it is to not pursue those priorities.
No, like realistically, what we're talking about is that laziness happens to be a priority of your biology, not expending more effort than you need to. It is not expending more effort.
Evidence. Listen, I can show you biological evidence right now.
Dude, I wasn't done talking.
Lazy is bad for you.
Dude, efficiency in terms of conserving energy and not using it where it is unnecessary is good for the survival of your biological form, always.
Okay. So
if it's unnecessary expenditure, you should avoid it. You are hardwired to do so.
So that does not always hold true. So again,
I don't agree. How do you know that? Okay. Where's your evidence?
So that's immediately debunked by the existence of professional athletes, people that essentially overexert themselves to be the best at a certain sport.
How is that debunking?
You have to overexert to make that happen. You have to dedicate a lot of your time simply to exertion.
Can you explain to me how that debunks what I said?
Okay, so you're then saying that it is biologically implemented within us to not overexert ourselves or to not exert too often.
Nope, not what I said.
Maybe I misunderstood. What was your point about exertion?
I said it's biologically built into you not to exert unnecessary effort. Okay? If the effort is necessary for you to reach your valued goal, such as becoming a professional athlete, then it is justified by the value you put in the goal. But if it comes to expending effort that you think, in your opinion, it is unnecessary, you will try to avoid it. People are fundamentally lazy. It's built into us because conserving energy allows you to survive longer.
Right. So the quality of being lazy, and again, I'm going to use the college one here. The quality of being lazy is simply not pursuing your priorities. And there's actually quite a few studies that hold on, I'm just saying that essentially there's quite a few studies that suggest that human beings need things to do. They need tasks.
Yes.
Because if you were to have nothing to do, these people get clinically depressed. They've actually seen people No,
dude, that feels like a non sequitur, really. What we're talking about.
I'm just saying that this isn't built into us. Being lazy is not built into you. What I'm saying, but what you're arguing is a survival mechanism. I'm not saying that it's not.
Let's think. All I'm saying is that your biology has a preference not to expend unnecessary effort. If we look at a reptile, a cold-blooded creature, pretty obvious that they would evolve not to expend unnecessary effort, and you can observe them doing so, right? They won't move if it's cold. They can't. It's not worth the expenditure, right? We are warm-blooded, but nonetheless, since we require fuel for our bodies and our brains, when it comes to doing something you yourself think is unnecessary when it comes to progressing towards your valued goals, you don't want to do it. It's as simple as that. You don't want to. Why should you? That's the answer you'll give. Someone tells you to do it and you go, what do I get out of it? Why should I? You're asking me to invest my effort into something that doesn't give me a result that I want.
Okay. So all I'm saying is that what you're referring to is a survival mechanism, the conservation of energy. So in that, again, that doesn't apply to the example I gave you, somebody not wanting to go to college simply because they're like, I don't want to expend that energy to do that. what that
not
is,
what they're
what that
doing.
is, hold on, you are ignoring essentially the best possible step forward with the information that it is the best possible step forward. You can understand the full benefits and still say, I don't want to.
You're making
it's not a
really
conservation. Hold on, I'm just saying that doesn't fit into your criteria because it's not conservation of energy. Hold on. It doesn't fit into conservation of energy because you're not surviving better because you're not going to college. You would in fact be surviving worse because you are then limiting not only your education, you are limiting your future opportunities by being lazy.
Did you remember
that is the example of what I'm saying. The lack of desire to pursue those priorities, which is a characteristic of free will. In fact, humans can also, there are certain situations where they can also override those survival instincts simply for pleasure or desire or other small trivial things.
Yeah, so like just quickly, like I feel like I accounted for the variance that you put in, right? And like when you come up with the same example and you say, for instance, like that, like when a college student is like deciding not to go to uni, even though they quote unquote know it is the best option for them, I actually am such a student who decided to have a year off. And I'm telling you that the reason that I did
that's not the example.
Listen, the reason that I did that was that I reasoned to myself.
Yes, but you're misrepresenting me now.
I'm not. I'm saying I'm giving you a concrete example. Let me talk, all right? The reason that I chose to have
you haven't debunked the example that didn't.
I wasn't talking. I wasn't done talking. The reason, all right, that I decided to have a year off was because I am fundamentally lazy, and I reasoned about it like this. Never again in my life will I have an opportunity to not have responsibilities, so I'm going to take the opportunity right now, even if it puts me behind in the long run, because in my frame of reference, the scope that I'm considering is primarily short term, and if that is what I am considering in my analysis, the conclusion that I should maybe take a year off instead of going to uni is perfectly reasonable because I'm not considering the full length of time.
No, that is a great example that you have there that fits into your criteria. All I'm saying is that essentially the example that I laid out is not only, within practical application, like it exists. There's quite a few people that make this choice, right? To go, hold on, I'm just saying, hold on, I'm just making the point. I'm saying that, okay, so the choice, and as I laid it out, was somebody gets out of high school and they decide, I don't want to go to college because I just don't want to, despite knowing that this will have more positive benefit for them, more good in the future. It will have more opportunity for them, better education, and they're doing it simply because they don't want to go to college, simply because they could just not like going to school. So even with that available data, plenty of people still decide, I just don't want to. And the reason that doesn't fit into your criteria is that this person has made this choice, even with the available data, all of it screaming in their face that going to college is the best possible thing they could do. It's the best next step. It will provide the most good with their time and resources.
Dude, like the way that they're performing the analysis, that isn't the conclusion that they come to.
Okay. So what conclusion does every person in the world come to that you know of?
Oh, that's a bit of a straw man, right? What I actually said was...
That's not a straw man. You're essentially saying the example I laid out is not possible.
No,
so I'm
it's
asking
about as
you
bad
then,
as a straw man could get, all right? Listen to what I'm saying.
I'm saying you tried to disregard it by saying people don't think that way.
Oh, man, listen. People who think that way have a reason that you do not know that they think justifies their decision.
Okay,
all of
so
them.
You're saying some people just don't... Okay, I'll let you go.
Like all of the people who decide to do X think that X was justified at the time that they decided to do it. They think that it is the correct decision. That's why they do it. And you're saying, like, how is it, like, it demonstrates free will that you can do something that's bad for you. But no, because if I limit my frame of reference, if I limit the scope of my analysis to only the short term, lots of things that are objectively bad for me, most of us would agree, become very good options. If I'm only thinking about how I'm going to feel in the next hour, maybe popping some heroin into my veins is a good idea, right? Because I'm not thinking about the consequences.
Okay. So then, and just to get this out of the way, you agree people can make these bad decisions, essentially, right?
I think that people can make decisions that they later regret. I don't think that they make decisions that they think are wrong in the moment that they make them.
Well, I've given you a few examples of that happening.
I mean, you've given me anecdotal examples where you think it's happened to you. I don't really agree.
Well, we both are only using our perception. Technically, that would be the best example I could give you because my perception works best on my action.
Look,
especially
man,
in hindsight.
Ultimately, I don't agree with your analysis of it. And like when you give me your analysis, it sounds like you're.
I'm curious then. What's wrong with my analysis? What flaw have I made?
What you keep supposing that there is such a thing as free will without showing that it necessarily follows from anywhere. Like you're basically treating it as your action.
We're having a different side of it. I'm arguing that these things are not predetermined by your criteria because if I remember correctly, your criteria was people will make the best decision for themselves. Essentially, the decision that they feel will give the best outcome to themselves, right? Or try to.
No, but listen. Okay.
I'm just saying what you just said is contradictory.
It's not contradictory.
What you just said is contradictory, however. Because if it was a deterministic system in which you are supposed to make the best decisions for yourself, not only should it already come instilled in us with the best possible answers already for our own choices and the best decision-making process available to a species like ours, like survival instincts, not only that, it would have had to evolve over time. And then our decision-making by your theory of it all being deterministic should be way more advanced than it is now. There shouldn't be room for these kinds of errors because then...
That just seems like you're making like a subjective hypothesis and saying...
I'm not making a subjective hypothesis.
You're saying... No, listen, you're extrapolating.
I haven't even finished. You don't know what I'm saying. I'm actually comparing it. I'm comparing... Hold on. I'll make it nice and concise. I'm comparing it to the survival instinct that is within animals because that is a deterministic factor. That is a deterministic system. Survival instincts work much more efficiently and much better than free will and decision making in our subjective minds as humans.
Look,
so
like you just
if it was deterministic, like you claim it is, by nature, it would be an a priori truth that essentially these would have to be perfect decision-making processes, especially over all the time that we've had to evolve and adapt to everything around us.
Invalid conclusion.
Okay, how so?
Well, because the fact that the world is deterministic does not outlaw the possibility of subjective mistake making. Not in any fucking sense. No way at all does it eliminate that. The fact of the matter is that you don't know everything. Like I said before, you have a limited frame of reference. You only have a certain amount of information. You have a small scope. So when you try to reason about the world, all right, you get things wrong. The fact that the world is ultimately an a priori deterministic structure does not mean that subjects instantiated within the world would be incapable of making an error. There's nothing in the...
Well, you're correct there.
Yeah,
so
exactly. But that's
we agree on that. But what I'm saying, all I'm saying is that when you actually compare, because your argument at this point, if I can sum it up in one sentence, is that this is a deterministic system here. And what I'm saying is that if it is, and it is implanted in us, this decision-making like you claim, then it has to be at least as good as the survival instinct within humans as well. Because we have always had this subjective decision-making. However, why is our survival instinct much, much better and more efficient than our subjective reasoning and free will and decision-making?
Did you just say we've always had our subjective decision-making?
As humans? Why wouldn't we?
No, as animals.
No, I said as humans.
Yeah, but humans come from animals.
That's great and all. I know we're technically an animal. I'm talking about our species. Because as far as recorded history,
our species
I'm just saying, as far as we can possibly look back at humans, we've always had those sorts of subjective reasoning and decision-making skills.
Yeah, false.
So what I'm arguing, hold on. All I'm arguing is that why would we have these things implemented us as basically as far back as we can see, both survival instincts and this free will, as I call it.
Yeah.
Why would the free will not advance? Why would it not be even close to as efficient as the survival instinct?
I can't even track your argument anymore. You just keep asserting your supposition about free will. You haven't given any deductively valid argument.
No, I'm using your argument here. You said
you're
that.
not. Listen,
Okay, hold
listen.
on. I am. I'm saying.
I'm not
that
done
by
talking
your
yet.
argument,
I'm not done talking. All right. Like
well, no,
you
hold on.
haven't.
You're
You haven't.
misrepresenting, and you're also saying that you
Listen,
don't understand. So let me
dude,
clarify.
you still have to let me
I'm
finish.
just.
All right. You have to let me
You're
finish.
basically saying you don't understand me, and you're trying to misrepresent me at the same time. I would have to clarify.
Right? So, like, what you're saying is that you're saying two things are true. You're saying that there's no evidence to indicate determinism. That's false. I already said all of the fields of science.
I didn't say. Again, you're misrepresenting.
I mean, you said that there was no evidence for determinism. You said that multiple times.
No,
I'm
I
not
didn't. I said there's not enough evidence. Again, you're misrepresenting.
Dude, this is being recorded. Is it possible that you just equivocated? Because I fucking guarantee you I know what you said.
Okay,
I was listening.
and I guarantee you I know what I said, because I said it. I said there's not enough evidence. I'm basically saying that there's more evidence to suggest that there is free will as opposed to the Okay. Okay, that's great.
So you said there's more evidence for free will.
Okay,
right, but
I did want to clarify this, though. I did want to clarify. I'm not presupposing anything. I'm using your argument to show you the flaw within the logic.
Anything.
Hold on. I'm showing you the flaw within the logic you propose by using that logic, is all I'm saying. By your logic, I know, but by your logic, you said that this free will, that I call it, or this subjective decision-making, has been implemented us like the survival instincts. All I'm saying is, why would they have not advanced even close to the same speed? Why would the survival instinct be much more efficient?
Because, obviously, first of all, that's a non sequitur. Second of all, plants and animals have been surviving for a lot longer than they have been making subjective decisions, right? Like, that is such a non sequitur, it's not even funny. What we're talking about is whether or not free will exists, right? And I'm saying, like, not yet, not once, have you given an argument that actually shows as its necessary conclusion that free will exists, and you deny that there is enough evidence to support the conclusion of determinism, and you rely on right, anecdotal evidence of, like, I realize that. You rely on anecdotal evidence, which basically constitutes your opinion that there is such a thing as free will because it's consistent with your perception. But when we observe the empirical sciences, we do not see any freedom at all. We see deterministic mechanics at every level of analysis, and it is literally absurd to suppose that human cognition is the one level wherein there is freedom. That's just obscene. I do not accept it.
Okay.
Well, then it would be deterministic. What if it was determined to be that way? Dude. No, but you just explained it yourself. If it is deterministically true that quote-unquote free will exists, then will exists, and it is not in any sense free from the deterministic mechanics that constitute it. Yeah, but it's not free will. It's not free from the mechanics. That's the point.
Okay. So what is determined that we... Okay, so if we are completely...
No, I said it didn't. That's my whole position.
So... Oh, God.
Pretty sure I didn't. Dude, I didn't say... I never put forward that free will existed.
Okay. So, what I'm essentially saying is that when you look back, determinism doesn't really fit, like, and I said this at the very beginning, if you want to check the recording for this, is that it doesn't fit our perception of reality. And when I say that, what I'm saying, yes, okay. So let me just ask you a simple question then. Why would we have, as humans, why do we have subjective decision making, or as I call it, free will, in your deterministic system? What's the reason?
Basically because we can't predict what decision we're going to make. Like, when you make a decision, your like mind sort of like perceives what it thinks are its options, right? And then it has like a set of criteria that it's using to evaluate them. It's trying to decide on what it should do according to the rules it uses to decide on that sort of thing. And like, so what it's doing is it's sorting through the options that it perceives, and it's deciding which one most consistently fits its criteria, okay? And because it's looking for consistency with its criteria, okay, it's always going to choose the answer that is most consistent with its criteria. And the fact that you don't know...
Do you happen to know the criteria off the top of your head?
I'm not quite done. The fact that you don't know what conclusion you will come to doesn't mean that you weren't always going to come to just one conclusion.
Okay. So what criteria would you say are used? Is it simply the best decision to advance our well-being?
I told you, okay?
Hold on, I'm asking if I have your criteria correctly. You don't have to get upset. I'm just asking, is it that we are making the best decision to advance our well-being?
Correct. No, you didn't have it correct.
Okay, so what is it then? Feel free to enlighten.
Okay, so again, you're equivocating between what actually is the best for you and what seems the best for you at a particular moment in time, right? What seems the best for you at a particular moment in time is always what you will choose. That's how you decide. You decide based on what you think, subjectively believe, even if it is not true, to be the best option based on whatever variables you consider in such an analysis. When you said, for instance, that you went to this party and you know you shouldn't have been drinking, but you drank anyway, a smarter you could predict into the future that if you made the first rationalization, you would get drunk. And so if you really did think it was bad to make the first one, you wouldn't have done it. But the fact that you did shows that you are confused about what exactly you're supposed to be doing.
Okay. So the reason that I think that example doesn't fit your criteria, and the reason I think I was very right in saying that your criteria for this is the brain making the best decision it can with the available data, is that I very much know I have the empirical, and even at this time, I had the empirical evidence for what alcohol does to a body, what it does to your liver, what it does to your nervous system, what it does to your neurological structure. Yes. I know all of this, right? So then I say, fuck it, it sounds fun. And this is not an out of the ordinary thing. People do this all the time. People will do this with, and hold on, what I'm basically arguing, to sum this up, is that by your logic, number one, this determinism would be instilled in us for almost no reason, because it doesn't affect survival. Okay, hold on. I'll explain then. So the reason I say it's no reason is it doesn't affect survival in most cases. What it sounds like is that you've said, essentially, your brain will analyze all the options presented to it and then pick the best options. So then what you're arguing is that this determinism is meant for humans to be able to sort through the many options we are presented. So that's what I've got there.
Isn't it true that in the situation where you drank alcohol,
impulsivity cannot exist.
Dude, in your situation where you drank alcohol, right? The reason that you drank alcohol was that in the moment you decided, by limiting the frame of analysis to the short term, that your having fun was worth more to you in the moment than acting responsibly. Isn't that what happened?
No. What I thought was to hell with the weighing of this, to hell with thinking about the consequences.
That's what I said.
Just do stuff. That's what
I said.
Well, no,
that is what I said.
You're saying that I weighed that short-term pleasure over the actual long-term consequences. However, hold on. I'm just saying, however, by definition, I just told you I understood the long-term consequences, and knowing those, I obviously have to think that those long-term consequences are worse and will weigh out the short-term pleasure. However, I still made the decision to say, yeah, I don't care if this doesn't weigh out as far as I can see. I'm still doing it.
So why did you make the decision?
Simply because I can.
What you're saying is because you value acting impulsively sometimes.
Yeah.
No, I don't value acting impulsively. I think it's actually detrimental. I think impulsivity...
Dude. Okay,
you asked me hold on, you can't tell me to stop talking. Hold on, you can't ask me a question and then say stop talking.
You keep talking over me when I'm not done speaking.
You asked me a question and I responded. And then you said stop talking midway through my answer.
It was a rhetorical question because I'm trying to demonstrate a point.
Then say don't answer and say this is a rhetorical question.
I thought you might be able to infer it from the context, honestly.
I wouldn't be able to infer... Again,
That's fine. That's a fine caveat. Okay? We will give a prompt when it's a rhetorical question.
Fine.
Is that fine with you?
Okay, so I'm trying to break down your decision into the factors that you considered. Now, if you chose impulsive like behavior over what was long-term responsible, what that means is that in the moment that you performed the analysis, you decided that you did not care about the long-term consequences and that you valued the short-term consequences.
Okay. No, I don't value it. In fact, I don't
No, I didn't
value
say you
having.
No,
do.
that's
Hold
a
on.
fact.
Look,
We're not
I didn't
saying
No,
say
what
you
I
do.
do
That's
not
in the
value.
variables.
I do
That's
not
in one of
value
the
pleasure
Hold on.
over.
Hold
Dude,
on.
that's a non
Dude,
sequitur.
hold on.
That's not a non sequitur.
Seriously,
So
dude, hold
the
on.
reason it's not a non
Hold
sequitur
on.
is
No justification yet. That's all rhetorical at this point. Okay? That's what should have been stated. It's for your consideration as one of the variables in the set that you're using to structure your idea of free will. We're codifying what you think about free will. And if
Yeah.
we're
Okay.
if we're
You can help me
delineating it
define it, but
appropriately,
I
you
still have
have
my
to
own
help
definition.
us. Hold on. You have to help us understand your commands and your prompts. You're not going to just give this information over freely. You know that. The way
Why would I
that you
not?
make an
Wait,
analysis.
why would I not?
Hold on. Well, because I know what I'm talking about.
Okay,
Because you're
well, what
trying
are you
to
talking
win.
about?
Like, obviously, that's why.
Yes.
Well, of
And
course,
there's
we're having a debate. Of course, I'd like to win.
No, but you
well,
don't
there's
want to
something more
concede
to
on
win.
any point that will like
No.
lead to you losing, even if you actually don't agree with it. You don't want to concede to it.
No, I can concede as soon as I'm put in a position where it's obvious that I'm wrong to myself.
Dude,
I will
it's
very much
obvious.
concede.
We're trying to show that right now. Okay?
Yeah.
And if
Well,
you're
I'm
open
aware.
to it,
I'm aware that
No,
you
but-
guys think a
but
certain
listen to
way
the
about
analysis.
me, and then think a certain way about
No.
Matt.
no,
So I
dude,
understand what I already came into
slow
this
down.
thinking you guys would have
Seriously,
your
slow down.
biases.
Slow
That's
down,
all
bro.
I'm talking about. I'm not.
Well, that's
I'm not
fine.
talking
Everyone
fast.
has biases, and what we're trying to
I
do is
know.
quantify our bias together.
Yeah, okay.
That's. I'm not
Okay.
quantifying the bias.
Stop.
I'm simply
Okay, look.
understanding
Well,
that
I
it's
am.
there. I'm letting you know that I understand that it's there.
Okay.
All right.
I'm telling you, I am quantifying the biases then. Okay.
Okay, we'll quantify it for
Just
me.
slow
Okay,
down.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
where am I?
I'm just
Where am
gonna-
I outpacing here? Where am I doing
Just
that?
wait 1 sec, man, all right? I'm going to quantify them for me. I know for me that when I decide to do something impulsive that I'm pretty sure I shouldn't do in the long term, what I am doing is I am throwing aside the value of considering the long term in order to gratify my impulsive desire in the short term. That's what I'm doing.
And
when
I agree with that.
Yeah, when I talk to other subjects, they all agree that when they decide to do something that isn't in their best interest, they do it because in the moment they think that it is.
Okay, so what I'm arguing is that not only did I know the decision I was making was wrong, I don't have to take that into consideration for my own decision making. I don't have to care whether it's right or wrong.
Not consciously. Sure.
That's the
We're not contesting.
Exactly. Hold on. So what I'm asserting is that I don't need to adhere to your criteria that would say that I have to make the best possible decision. I cannot care. I can make decisions I can make decisions with zero knowledge on what is good and bad for me as well.
Yes.
So
that's what we're saying.
The issue that you present to me with your criteria is then if somebody has no perception of right and wrong, why would they have the ability to make decisions at all?
They can search through options.
It's
just like you can search through options on a video.
No, I agree. So that is exactly what I was going to define it as. And what I'm saying is you don't need to make your brain is not deterministically set to make the best possible option. It's simply you picking something for whatever reason.
The variables are there.
Yes. The variables are there, but you pick an option. You freely chose an option of your own volition. That is free will in essence.
What do you mean pick? What do you mean pick? You evaluate.
Okay. Well, I'll explain. Unless that's rhetorical.
Do you or do you not evaluate? That is not rhetorical.
Okay. Do I evaluate? In what context do you mean?
I mean, when you decide what to do, are you evaluating your options?
Am I evaluating them? On some level, you evaluate everything you see constantly.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. So
no. Evaluation.
Listen, I'm not done. Okay.
Okay. No. Go ahead. Feel free.
When you subconsciously decide to do something impulsive instead of what you consciously think you should do, that is you not accounting for the things that you value subconsciously properly.
Exactly. And whether you're aware of it or not is non sequitur to the point. It's just a statement of humility, actually, if you want to qualify it as anything. And It's something that I'm willing to do right now, just to hear everything about the handful of people that are listening to this. It matters to those people that we are at least sincere in the way that we're treating the information as it's coming at us in real time. Okay.
Okay. So there's no intellectual dishonesty, is what you're essentially saying. You don't want them to be exposed to intellectual dishonesty, is what I'm hearing.
Well, all of us. I think we can all safeguard against that without letting our guard down, but also being able to be quick with like a response of just true or false. Do you do this or not? Yep. And the first, let your impulse go on that and just go yes or no.
Well, that would be unwise.
It wouldn't though, because the thing is,
that's exactly what I'm arguing for. Is that I can make unwise decisions. Well, hold on. I just wanted to say real quick, and I'll let you go again.
Not if you want to be.
What I'm saying is that I can make those unwise decisions. Like even in this debate, I could just spout nonsense and make it sound halfway believable to extend this debate. However, my view on this, can be articulated in that we can make decisions that are both wrong for us and bad, and we can make decisions with zero. Hold on. We can also make decisions with zero understanding of right and wrong, or good or bad, or positive free will, or detriment. With that being said, it doesn't fit into the criteria that Matt has laid out, that decision-making and free will essentially equates to your brain analyzing the options it's presented and picking the best one that advances your well-being. That doesn't fit in the criteria.
Okay.
Right, not when you frame it that way.
Do you recognize that the equation of what maximizes your well-being is dynamic?
Sorry, my thing.
Like the equation, the equation. Okay, so the equation that determines whether or not something will benefit your well-being is dynamic.
Okay, how so?
Well, like, it changes based on the situation. In most situations, when you're presented with an impulsive choice, right, the fun isn't sufficient to justify you throwing away the consequences. But in some situations, clearly, you change your approach based on the information, which is that it will be fun, and you like to have fun, and you have a subconscious desire to not be responsible, to just enjoy yourself, to sort of give in to the way that you are and feel the way that you do and think what you do without all of this extra stuff on top. That appeals to you on a level you are not consciously articulating, and the fact that you don't recognize that that appeals to you doesn't mean that at the time when you decide to gratify that impulse that it doesn't actually appeal to you, because the fact that you gratify the impulse pretty clearly demonstrates that it does.
On some level.
Yes, at least on some level. Otherwise, you wouldn't have gratified the impulse.
Okay. So to gratify an impulse doesn't necessarily mean that you are advancing the best interest of yourself, though. That's what
it's on a limited frame of reference, though.
Yeah.
It does.
So, like, if you
but to understand, to imply that you understand, that would then say that you understand the difference between short-term and long-term gratification and well-being.
Dude, I don't think so, like, it seems like
wait, hold on. Your buddy just even said, yeah. What do you mean, no?
No, just listen to me. It seems like what you're saying is that people like act according to only what they think is empirically provable. That isn't the case. People act based on their subjective biological impulses. Even if you know activity X is really bad for you, if you get a big rush out of it, guess what? You might just do it because your biology values the rush beyond what your rationality values about the avoiding of consequences. That is how, like, we know that is true, because
especially when booze is involved.
Yeah, when you do such a thing, when you do such a thing and make an action you would later regret, okay, in that moment, if you didn't think it was the right thing to do for you in the frame of reference you were applying, you just wouldn't have done it. How could you have done it?
It's like step one in admission with like AA. Even like this is how these people make the change out of their bad habits. And I'm not saying that what you had is a bad habit. That's not the accusation or anything I'm trying to say. We all do it.
I was just starting college at the time, so yeah.
It's even more understandable, man. But like what we're saying is that on a subconscious level, the way that your, I guess, scope of time got to narrow in on the present moment only, like just the fuck it, let's do it attitude. We all know that feeling.
No, I can see. Here's the thing, though, is that I understood the long term, and I illustrated this with Matt as well.
As can we? As do I. Man.
Exactly.
I've made
but
that
what I'm saying is that even taking that into account, I still have the free will to essentially determine whether I want to pursue
the imagination
my highest.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, hold on. What I'm saying is that I have the freedom to essentially choose whether I want to pursue this positive well-being, or if I want to say, fuck positive well-being. No one gives a shit. And
yeah, but
I can
under
do
those
that simply because I can. Yes, but a person, if they were so inclined to do so, could make decisions that are detrimental to themselves with knowledge that that is detrimental to themselves, simply because humans have that freedom. Like at any point, I could decide, you know what, I'm gonna go play in traffic because I like seeing cars go by me. Right. I very much know that any of those 2-ton fucking metal contraptions going 60 miles an hour have enough kinetic force to kill me upon impact. However, if I figure that's fun, I can go do it.
Right. And this is what I'm trying to actually convey. It sounds like you say, because you're not exactly hypothecating in those moments. You're kind of doing a free imagination, like free association with your creative capacity to analyze information in the present moment. Something to that effect.
What would you call it to be able to essentially make decisions that are contrary to your well-being, that are a detriment to you? What would you call that ability that humans have?
I mean, negligence, even.
Yeah. Negligence. Okay,
yeah,
so are you forced to be negligent? Wait, yes, but are you forced to be negligent?
It's biological. Like you are limited.
What biological factors force you to
You're limited. You have biological limitations.
No. The example I've laid out is that I understand. I'm not limited in my understanding of what this will do to me.
We're not talking about your understanding. Your understanding
so it's not an understanding thing. So what is forcing me biologically? Well, what is biologically forcing me to then go out and make these decisions that are detrimental to me with that full understanding?
Your impulses. Are you
the chemical rush?
Okay, so what is that impulse then?
It's the basic mechanics of biology.
Rush.
Yeah, like what dopamine receptors are responsive to in that moment. Those are the deterministic elements that are informing your biological sensors. Okay, the way that you're interfacing with the temporal frame of reference in a college era drinking spout, the way that the human biological mechanism has adapted to that in recent years especially is one that gives into negligence the carefree beauty of irresponsibility and
exactly
enjoys
and that's
itself.
What I'm arguing is free will.
It's free imagining. Like, you are absolutely correct that
so
you're
we call
imagining
it different things,
something.
but it is the same thing. It's the same concept. We just have different names for it.
Not necessarily. I think the technical mechanism that we're describing.
Is it the same concept? Because
it is the same concept.
Listen, dude, I feel like the whole point of this debate is that it's not the same concept. You are trying to say that they are the same. They are not.
Well, okay. So what I've discussed is that you have the choice. You have the freedom to decide that you can do what is detrimental to you. Now, you can call that whatever you like, but that's how I've defined free will throughout this whole debate. So to admit that exists would then go against your determinism.
Okay. Like, let me just try a definitional approach, all right? So what does free mean?
No. I just want you to tell me what the flaw is. What is the flaw within that point?
Yeah, I'm telling you.
That's pretty much my premise. What's the flaw?
Compositional.
I'm trying to tell you, what does free mean?
Okay, wait, Matt. Let your friend explain it, because he sounds like he has something.
No, dude, just answer my question right now, okay? What does free mean?
You would have to answer mine first. If you answer mine first, I'll answer yours.
Man, your question wasn't on topic. I'm asking you.
It is on topic. That's the premise of my argument for this debate, so it is on topic.
Listen, you said, how do I challenge it? I'm trying to, and you're saying you're not answering my question.
No, tell me. I'm not saying...
Yeah.
I'm saying, what's the flaw?
I'm giving you the line of reasoning that demonstrates the flaw. Cooperate with me, okay? Ready? Okay. Ready? Let's go.
I'll cooperate for right now.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So, when you say that something is free, what do you mean?
Free?
Yes.
The ability to make one's own decisions.
No. When free in general, not free when it comes to will.
There's many definitions to free. Free could be in a monetary sense.
There's a general definition.
There's a general definition. There's many different ways to use this.
Yes, but
it is polysemic. But what we're asking is that, like, you come up with a general definition of how you're using free.
So
in the
like,
context
okay,
of free will,
absent-
not in the context of free will, in its general free context.
yeah,
Okay.
well, what do you mean when
Then
you say
that
that
would mean-
something is free?
That would mean not restrained by outside control.
Not restrained. Why by outside control?
Not restrained or limited by outside control. If you
What
want
does
me to
outside
expand
control
slightly.
mean?
Outside control would be, I don't know, maybe someone forcing you to move around, or if you want to go with a theistic look at this, I mean, God basically making you do things.
Right.
Okay.
I don't know. Those are good examples, I guess,
Yeah, but
of
just like, so
non-freedom.
if like your body forces you to try to survive, do you have freedom in that?
Yes.
But how? Like if I tried to kill you,
You can start.
then-
Okay, I'll tell you. I'll give you an example. So, how you can defy your body trying to make you survive is by starving yourself. At which point,
No,
the
but
body will no longer try to
that's
force
not-
you. Hold on. I'm giving you an example. Your
No,
body
but
will
it's
try.
not. It doesn't
Hold on,
address my
hold on.
point.
I'm just making one point. I'm just making
It
one
doesn't
point. to
address
give
the
you-
thing I said.
It is addressing. This is the
No,
direct
it doesn't.
question.
It doesn't
So,
address it.
okay,
You picked
no,
a sense
you
of the
asked
word.
me. Hold on. I'll tell you how it correlates. If it's a non sequitur, please tell me.
It is a
So,
non sequitur.
you
I can
asked
tell
me.
you already.
Okay, so what was I going to say then? If it's a non sequitur and you know.
Yeah, you were going to say that one of the ways that you can get around the survival mechanism is by starving yourself, but the survival instinct has nothing
That's
to do
not
with
what's gonna
slow
get around it.
starvation. No, but that's not the
Okay.
survival instinct has nothing to do with slow starvation. The survival
Okay,
instinct.
so I'm going to tell you why
I'm
that's
not done.
incorrect.
I'm not done.
Hold
The
on, I'm going
survival
to tell you why that's
instinct
incorrect.
is
Hold on.
instantiated in the moment.
You stopped my point without knowing what I was going to say. You just demonstrated that.
No,
so I'm going to tell you what I was going to say. Hold on. So, essentially, I was arguing that you can starve yourself. That is true. That was going to be part of it. But what I'm saying is that your body, to help you survive, will give you those feelings of hunger, and it will increase those feelings. It's sort of like pain. It's a contextual thing, so that way your body can influence you and how you react to things. However, should you starve yourself, the body will abandon those sorts of feelings. Your mind will then tell your body to essentially eat itself. So you can defy those instincts.
What? That's isn't your mind telling your body to eat itself? Your body trying to survive? Pretty sure that's
your
exactly
body trying
what it is.
Yes, but you are defying that. Hold on, your free will is defying that and allowing that to happen at all.
Listen, maybe there are multiple. Listen. Maybe there are multiple levels of analysis that make up what you would call yourself. Isn't that possible?
No, that's a fact. There are.
No, yeah, I know there are. So when
Yes, that's a fact.
when you, for instance, try to starve yourself, all right, your survival mechanism does not kick in directly. It kicks in indirectly, like you said, by trying to make your body eat itself. But the survival mechanism I was talking about was the instinctive response to danger, to death, which is that if I come along and I attack you, even if you think every day about how you'd like to go under a bus, instinctively, you will fight back. You will try to protect your life. That is how you are built. You don't have a choice, right? There are things inside you.
Nope.
There are things inside you that control you that you do not have a choice about. We've shown it scientifically. When the hypothalamus takes over, your ability to consciously mediate what you're going to do is really limited, like insanely limited.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, are you done? I don't want to interrupt you.
I think what I just did there was I demonstrated that there are things inside you that control you that make you not free.
Okay. So there are certain things that that's not a control. However, because and you just agreed, hold on. So you just agreed to this, that I can defy those feelings of hunger. The best control the mind has over me in the starvation example is to make me feel hungry, potentially make me feel sick, potentially make me focus on food. That is not control. I can very much defy that. That is the system that I'm talking about. That is the free will that I'm talking about. I have the free decision-making process to say, I don't care what my body says. I don't care if it's telling me I'm starving or that I need food to survive. I can starve myself. I can very much do that. The best example, and the one you should have used here, was that I can't bite off my own finger because I simply can't make that active choice.
Well, that's not true, though. You could.
I think you could even.
Okay,
pretty sure you could.
Okay, fine. I misworded. Most people aren't capable of doing it. Your mind will stop.
I don't even agree with you.
Because you only need about the biting strength that you need to get through a carrot to get through your finger if you exclude the bone.
The point is, if you had some really good reason to bite your finger off, you probably would do it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yes, that's what I'm saying. You can override that as well, but that would go further to my point.
I don't think you understand. None of that demonstrates your point because of the thing that I said about 5 minutes ago. I said there are multiple levels of analysis.
Mm-hmm.
You said that's a fact. So the fact is that things that control you can be circumvented with the other levels of analysis, but that doesn't mean that they don't control you in the respect that I described.
No, well, that's not a full control.
It doesn't matter. It's control.
Okay. I'm just saying. So what would be the control mechanism? What level would that be that I can defy the starvation? What would that be?
That would be your conscious cognition overriding your unconscious desire to survive.
What would you call that? Because I call it free will.
I would call that you making an unfree decision based on your values.
Okay, so how is that unfree?
So I'll give you an example.
No. How is that unfree?
Because your values dictate what you're going to do. So here's an example. If you are a monk... Stop. If you're a monk...
Then, that's a subjective system.
If you're a monk...
that I've chosen to adhere to.
Dude. If you're a monk, you can decide to starve yourself for your own subjective reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what biological implementation in humans forces us to do that? Or do we just decide to?
No, that's a level of analysis which is conscious. They're different.
Perfect. So that consciousness, that ability is what's called free will, and it can vary from person to person. That's why. Hold on. I'm just making a point, and feel free to tell me if I'm wrong after I make the point. Oh, okay, cool. So tell me after I say this. So, what makes it different? Why can some people be monks and starve themselves or fast? And why do some people not have that? Why are some people gluttonous? Why are some people food connoisseurs? Why is there such differences?
Because they differ in personality, which is based off your biological constitution and the experiences that you have.
Okay, so your personality is, you've already admitted part of what I was going to say, that it is partly your experiences, your interactions with the world.
But your experiences are deterministic.
Okay, so you're familiar with the nature versus... Okay, so you're familiar with the nature versus nurture arguments, right?
Are you familiar with it? Because in reality,
nurture collapses. And since you're deflecting I assume you need me to explain.
I have an answer. No, I have an answer for you, okay?
Tell me your answer.
Nurture always collapses into nature because any experiences you have are of the natural world.
No, you're right. And I agree with that. That is usually the argument I use when I argue with people on that. So we agree there. Perfect.
So there's only nature.
No, in fact, it is us reacting to nature, hold on, it's how we choose to react to nature. That's why when you go to, hold on, I'm making one point and I'll let you go again. I'm just saying that's why you could go to therapy and have somebody essentially explain to you a different way of thinking. So that way, when you react in a detrimental way to this nature for the rest of your life, you can go to a therapist and they'll say, well, you're just thinking about it wrong. You're responding to that nature, that long-term stimuli the wrong way. Here's how to actually cope with it. Here's a few coping mechanisms. And then here's a positive way to think about this. So that way you are not a detriment to yourself with your decision making. However, that therapist is not controlling this person. That therapist is simply introducing a new mechanism of thinking, a new axiom, if you will. That's all it is, a new axiom to introduce to your own free will and your own decision making.
No,
which
but
you've already admitted throughout this debate is that conscious decision making, which can vary from person to person. So within a deterministic system, it should not vary from person to person. It's sort of like every other science in the world, because certain things, like let's say you can take an equation from math and you can apply it to other things. That's most of what things like gauge symmetry is based on. You simply just mess with variables and see what's sort of going to stay consistent and what's not. However, within free will, you can see that decision making can be consistent only if the person has the thought process to go through a positive way of thinking. So that's how most therapists work.
Okay, so are you a natural creature?
To make essentially a new decision-making system, one that is less detrimental. That's all it is. It's not a control thing. It is still free, by definition, the one that we agreed on.
You
Because
said
this
one
therapist is
point.
not controlling what you think. They're introducing a new way to think that's not detrimental.
You said 1 point. How long can you talk on 1 point, all right? Are you a natural
I said
creature?
like 4 points. I kind of shotgunned you, so I'll apologize for that. But I did say more than 1 point.
How, like, are we natural creatures? Is that something you agree to?
I'm sorry, what? Are we natural creatures?
Yeah, are we natural creatures?
I mean, in a sense, we somehow evolved from single-cell organisms to multi-cell over millions of years, but sure.
So you're saying that we are natural creatures?
I don't have all the... Again, this goes back to what you said. I don't
As
have
far
all
as
the
you
data
know.
to...
Wait,
As far as you know.
I don't have all the data to
I
make
don't care.
an
Use the
assertion
data
of
you've
that.
got. Use the data you've
Okay,
got. Make a deduction.
So you're asking me again to make to make an uninformed decision, basically.
Are you a natural creature, in your opinion? Yes or no?
In my opinion, I don't know. Let me consult my free will.
Do the uninformed decision thing.
Exactly. So my free will is going to allow me to respond to essentially make this uninformed decision and say that we are natural to some degree.
Okay, so we're not. No, not to some degree. We are fundamentally natural
To
creatures.
some degree.
No, fundamentally.
Oh, okay. So why are we natural in your opinion?
Because we're made up of biological genetic information.
Okay.
Like, obviously, you know, like, no shit, we're natural because we're biology. Biology is a part of nature.
Okay. So
Yeah. So do you accept that?
fine. No, yeah.
Yeah.
With that
You do.
definition, we're
Okay,
natural.
so-
With that definition,
All
we're
right. So
natural.
yeah.
There you
Okay. So
go.
then let's move through the argument then. Okay. So if you're a
Perfect.
natural creature, and if all other humans are natural creatures, then the only experiences that you can have as a natural creature are of the natural world or of other natural creatures. So when you bring up this distinction in your eyes between nurture and nature, the thing that you have to recognize is that everything you might call nurture is fundamentally natural. So nature is a deterministic system in which you exist, and you miscategorize some of the nature as nurture because it's useful to do so.
That's pretty rock bottom on biology.
Yeah. So from the biological standpoint, there are certain determining factors that will play into almost all of your decision making, is what you're saying.
Yep.
Evolutionary biology, essentially.
Yep.
Great. So
Yeah.
we agree that there's variables within decision making. How does that eliminate free will? Like all
Well, the
you've
variables are kinda
established
like
then is that there's biological variables.
The variables sound like instruments, like musical
No,
instruments.
what I said was that there are biological variables, and then there are other
Okay.
natural variables, and all of the variables are natural. That is what I got you to agree to when I got you to say that you are a natural creature. All right, all of the
Mhm.
variables are natural, and if all of the variables and all of the rules are natural, then nature determines what will happen in every single situation.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's just true. That is fact.
I mean, I can agree that there's biological variables and that there's
No, but-
circumstantial variables as well from the
Yeah.
nature and nurture arguments.
So
Like,
if
I
we
mean, that
collect
would still
all,
imply to me that we still make our own decisions regardless.
look, let's just quickly, if we collect all of the variables and all of the rules, and there are none
Mhm.
left out, then is the decision free from the variables and rules?
No.
Yes, it can be. Very
No,
well can
it
be.
cannot be. No,
Not if
it
you
Well,
collect
okay,
all
so
of
I'll
it.
use the other side to that
No,
again.
you didn't listen
No,
to
if
the,
you collect
listen to
all
the
of it, dude.
predication. If you
Yeah.
collect all of them, all of the things that you could possibly take into account.
And we can't really yet, but it's a propositional.
Yeah, in
That's part of the
principle.
issue too.
Yeah.
In principle, if you gathered all of the variables that you ever could take into account and all of the rules, then there would be only one outcome for you, according to the variables
there could
and
be
rules.
Hold on. There could be one outcome, and there could be one result of what you do. However, I can make a decision that is wrong or right, regardless. I can
That's
decide.
irrelevant, though. Yeah,
That
but
would
that
be the
doesn't
outcome.
demonstrate
Irrelevant because
freedom.
Yeah,
hold
that
on,
would be
hold
the
on.
outcome.
Hold on,
No.
I let you both. Hold on, I let you both go for a while. I'm just making one point, and then I'll let you go again.
Just
I'm
one
just
point?
saying that I'm just saying that with these variables, you as a human being can actually make a decision that makes zero sense within the context of these
Supposition.
biological or contextual variables. Even if
Dude,
you
that's a
understand them, you would be able to make a decision that is free of these
Contrary to.
variables and
Okay,
these
look, no.
understandings.
Yeah,
which
how
I've
could
already
you?
argued.
Okay, look. I think
I'll
that
tell
what
you
you
how
just
you
did.
could. That's a
Stop. It
oh,
wasn't a real
rhetorical.
question. It was
Okay,
rhetorical.
it's rhetorical.
Yeah. Okay.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I'll stop.
What I'm saying is, actually, I just like described to you a situation where everything was accounted for. All right. You cannot say as a valid response, no,
I can.
there is still freedom. No, you can't.
Well,
Analytically,
okay. No,
listen. I'm not done.
Uh-huh.
Analytically,
Okay, I'll
that
let you
is
go.
false. Okay.
Well, okay.
Analytically, if
I
in
agree.
principle you account for all of the variables and all of the rules, then
Okay.
the conclusion is necessarily deterministic, and there is no way to contest that.
Okay, hold on. I'll tell you how I can test it. Literally, me contesting that, even if I thought everything you said was correct, I still can sit here and let's just say for the sake of argument, and I don't believe this, but let's
Right.
hold on. For the sake of argument, hold on. For the sake of argument, let's say I agree with everything you say. Right now,
dude,
I'm still hold on. I'm
He's almost
still
there.
going to say I don't agree. I have free will, and
I
that free
know.
will is going to allow me to not agree with you, despite the evidence you put forth and me understanding
I just figured
and
out your
agreeing with
argument.
it.
I just figured out your
I'm
argument.
saying,
Your argument. Listen. Well, I'll just give you your argument,
no,
and you can
there's
tell me if I'm right.
there
You
is
can
no
tell me if I'm
argument
right.
past that.
Here's
Hold
your
on,
argument. Listen.
Hold on. No, that is my argument. Hold on. So
No, but
I'm
I'm
saying
trying to
It's about to get
rephrase
fun.
it.
I just proved that even if
I'm
I
trying to
agreed with
rephrase
everything
it.
you said, hold on, I just proved
fuck.
that everything you said, even if I agreed with you and thought it was all correct, I'm still gonna say I don't agree, and I can still do that due to free will. I
That's
don't
not
care.
relevant, dude.
And that's predictable.
You
That
just
is relevant because that
Stop,
means it is
stop.
100.
You're
Hold
cutting me
on. I'm
off.
still making a point.
You weren't
You were
still
interrupting
making
me
a
by saying
point.
it's irrelevant. Hold on. I'm just
fuck.
making a point. There's no need to get upset. I'm saying that my free will was still going to allow me to be free of the empirical evidence and even if it was a rock solid argument that has zero flaw in it, I still am free of that objective reasoning to say I don't agree, and I'm going to make decisions that contradict that.
Okay,
that
because you can
very
be wrong.
ability is what free will is. I don't care if it's wrong. I can still do it.
Just stop
Exactly.
for a sec.
That's fine.
Yeah,
Exactly. That is free will in essence. That's what I've been arguing.
Dude.
Well, it's just more like brat mode.
Okay, so no. Listen, I'm just gonna talk for a sec, okay? So
No, you can talk. Go ahead.
I went to rephrase you, and you repeated yourself 4 times instead of letting me check I understood you, right? That's called a fallacy of repetition. It is a fallacy, right? You repeated yourself 4 times when I said, let me check I've got you correctly, all right? What it sounded like you were saying to me is this. I have free will, and the proof for that is that no matter how good your argument is, I will not concede. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that for the sake of the debate. If I felt that your arguments were not, even if the points you made were inarguable and facts, I can still go against them and act, independently of them because my will and my decision making is free of any constraints like that. It doesn't have to be logical.
Yeah, okay, so I got that.
That proves my point.
Dude, I heard that. Okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
It proves what you think.
Stop. Yes, you think it proves your point. No, stop.
Decision, right?
I'm bringing it to a close. Okay,
that's what you're thinking.
I'm bringing it to a close.
Did I make the decision on that?
Stop.
And that you call it a decision. It's
it is a decision. If it's not a decision, what is it?
Stop. No luck. Look.
Hold on.
You say.
Well, I'm responding to your friend here. I didn't want to ignore him.
Yeah.
Look,
hold on.
So if that's not a decision, what is it?
So.
Okay.
Should I go or you? Okay.
Either one. This is fun.
Yeah, it is good, man. This is actually good fun because this is, in my opinion, kind of shadow of ego recoils into its like most closeted space of you're not going to catch me here, and I'm not going to. It's a good game to play actually, but one of the things that's predictable about the ideological possession of belief in one's own free will, if you will, is that we all recognize like the same patterns that we used when we were clinging to the same abstraction. And it is just an abstraction of information that we're attaching value, whether sentimental or otherwise, to. And if we take the time to accurately reflect in real time, kind of think about our thinking, we're kind of able to see that the pattern starts to quicken. The repetition of its denial, it gets into this kind of playful condescension space where it's fun. I
like how like non-viciously you worded that, because I think I know what you were thinking, and you were so nice about how you said it.
Yeah.
Thank you, man.
Can
And I do have sympathy with it, because I personally held a very unconscious attachment to free will. I didn't realize that I was requiring the need of using that word as much as I did probably 2-3 years ago. And once I had an argument with Matt about this, to where he was able to show me about like maybe 10 minutes ago's length of points, it clicked for me once he talked about the way that it kind of collapses all into nature. That nature is kind of, it's surrounded, it's surrounding whatever we consider to be nurture or culture, or the thing that we're kind of all existing within as subjectivities within a society and so on.
Right. Well, I'll get a little personal with you here, man.
Okay.
When I was younger, and I don't even know if this is a real disorder, but I was diagnosed with ODD, which is called oppositional defiance disorder.
I've got that, man.
So the free will thing, that's why I've always kind of thought that free will has to exist, because I can simply, no matter what it is, even if it's like a scientific law or, you know, a universal fact, I mean, I've proven to myself I have the ability to defy such things through my own will, through my own way of thinking, regardless. That's why I can keep going on this.
Yeah.
But
Dude,
Matt's arguments are, like, to any normal person, would be 100% convincing.
Bro, you know what's interesting?
The ODD thing is interesting.
I have ODD as well. So,
oh, shit.
You know, it's not a great... yeah. So
that's
just quickly,
awesome.
all right? Just quickly. What you did say at the end was that your like justification for believing in free will is that even if we present the sort of argument that should convince you, you're capable of basically being petulant and refusing to admit that we've demonstrated the conclusion. Okay, so what I'm saying is that pattern of justification is invalid. I'm evaluating it. It is invalid technically, and I think that the fact that you're using an invalid justification demonstrates that your conclusion is not justified, and our conclusion has been shown to be consistent with all of the available evidence in terms of science. Therefore, the world is deterministic, and there is no such thing as free will, except insofar as you experience the illusion of it.
Well, I would argue then that essentially I can decide to not even go with empirical evidence or any argument that you present to me, even if I agree with it and it makes perfect sense. I would say that the reason I can not agree with it still and defy that and be free from any logic, because that's what you're using here, is because of that free will.
Yeah, look,
like,
I'm
in
saying,
nature, I'm arguing for something that's not
Why
logical.
would you do that?
No, but just quickly,
it doesn't because it's free will. Free will doesn't need to be logical, in my opinion.
It's like I said, it's a petulant thing. Okay, it doesn't really matter. What I'm saying is, I already just now evaluated that strategy to be invalid logically. Therefore, the argument is over. The debate is over. That's not valid.
It's a technical.
Well, in that case, I would then be able to say that I can defy logic with my own will. My will is that I choose not to believe it despite that.
Okay.
But I don't care.
Why would you choose to defy logic?
No, look, he can
Simply
say that.
Simply because I can. I have free will.
He can say that, but I don't accept that as a valid contention. That's it.
Yeah, there has to be some sort of intention going on there.
I would say that the ability to freely decide to do that would be free will in and of itself.
Yeah, you can say that, but as I said, I do not accept that as a valid conclusion. Therefore, the debate is over. I don't accept that it's valid.
Well, if you don't accept that that's valid, that's fine. But, I would say that there's no way to disprove that I have free will, especially if I can, basically not accept that.
That doesn't bother me.
Plenty of experiments done.
So, in my mind, I would say that means that I have free will by definition, because it's free of even logic.
Look, yeah, like you can continue to say that, but let's change the topic because I just don't agree with you and I'm not going to accept that as valid.
That's okay.
Thank you for listening. Like, share, subscribe, and join us in the Nameless Debates Discord. We hope to see you there.